No One Else is the title of a new graphic novella by R. Kikuo Johnson. It's a story of grief, but told with some humor and references to other issues as well, layered with meaning and told with so much subtlety that I was still picking up story points on my third read. This week I'm joined by graphic medicine expert Alice Jaggers to talk about this very interesting book. First, if you appreciate the work we do on this podcast, we'd love it if you'd support the show at patreon.com/deconcomics for as little as $2 a month. Check out our goals and rewards and pledge your support now at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
This is Alice.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo, and this time I am joined by Alice Jaggers in Dallas. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Surviving.
So I asked Alice in Dallas, to join me this time because we have a book that fits into the category of graphic medicine. So tell us who you are and what graphic medicine is.
Okay, so I'm Alice Jaggers, and I'm an expert in graphic medicine. I work with the Graphic Medicine International Collective, and I work on the graphic medicine website. Graphic medicine, short and sweet, is that it's the intersection where comics meets medicine, health. So that's kind of any comic that you find that has some sort of health element to it, that's graphic medicine. So what we do, and who is it for? It's for everyone. It's for patients, it's for caregivers, it's just for regular people, but it's also for professionals. And it can be as simple as, a little comic strip doodle kind of thing that your doctor gives you, or it can be, graphic memoirs, or like this, where it's a graphic novel that deals with a lot of health stuff, especially mental health.
Yeah,
so.
Mental health. Yeah, mental health is included in that.
Yes.
This book particularly deals with grief. It's called
Mm-hmm.
No One Else by R. Kikuo Johnson, who I guess grew up on Maui, and that's where the story takes place. Now, I just happened to see something about this book on Twitter. And I hardly ever look at Twitter except when I'm posting stuff there for my various shows. And something about it just kind of caught my eye. And even though the idea of it being about grief sounded like a downer, I still kind of was interested in it. And maybe it was the art style. Sometimes the art style kind of tells you a lot about the book. Mm-hmm. And actually, it turned out that this book does have some bits of humor in it, which I was glad of. So it's not a relentless downer. But at the same time, I felt like with repeat readings, the emotion in it got stronger for me.
Yes. The first time that I read the book through, just to kind of get a general sense of it, kind of closed the book and it was just kind of, what did I just read? Because there was so much to it that, there's definitely rereads definitely helped for you to catch some of the subtle storytelling
there's so much
in the
subtle
book. That's
in it. I mean, what really took a while for it to sink in spite of the fact that it's on the cover, was the fishing boat. The first time I read through, the fishing boat didn't really make an impression on me. Mm-hmm. But, so in this story, the woman, Charlene, who's been taking care of her father for the past 7 years, he dies. And obviously, I mean, it's barely even stated, I don't think, but the fishing boat was clearly his, and he liked fishing. And we pick up, Well, particularly in that sort of funeral scene where it's mentioned some things about, like, he would spend his son's inheritance on bait.
Yeah, well, that was his form of an investment because
Yeah.
bait could yield fish.
hmm
Yes.
But, it's not laid out like Dad really liked fishing. You like to use his boat, and it's too bad he couldn't use it these past X number of years. But yeah, it's not clearly stated. You have to really pay attention.
Well, and I felt like upon rereading it that the boat had a lot of symbolism there.
hmm
And when you realize that, or my assumption that he kind of really had this boat as an extension of self. He really felt really strongly about the boat. So it kind of makes a few of the scenes make a little bit more sense, or at least one scene in particular make a little bit more sense. I don't know how much spoilers is this because there's a flashback.
hmm
And
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. The son's
yes, and
the
his
son's
son
flashback. Yeah.
And it's to do with the boat, and it seems like a very strong reaction.
Yes.
I mean, it's a strong reaction regardless, but I guess it makes a little bit more sense if you kind of see it as a personal affront than what the son's.
Yeah. And kind of out of nowhere, in the middle of the book, there's that spread of, like, apparently a flashback or a dream showing on the boat, and clearly it's like on a fishing trip. It's out on the water, and you can see blood in it of fish that have been cut up.
Yeah.
And just that picture was really impressive to me because there are only two ink colors in this book, blue and orange. And on that picture, it feels like more, not just two colors. It's really well done.
It's very impressive art, and it almost seems like, because it is so, I mean, it's such a big change from kind of what's going on before and after. So it seems like an abrupt change, too, and you get this just, like, beautiful, full spread, which, I mean, I found it really interesting. I'm sure there's more to it even than I could glean, other than just feeling like it represented the father.
Yeah, I mean, the pages surrounding it, if I'm looking at the thumbnails here online, it's like there's page after page where there's no orange. Right. And then suddenly you get that spread, and there's so much nice orange in it. And then afterwards, there's another 10 pages with just blue. So it really stands out.
Yes.
Now, Charlene is a nurse, but after her dad dies, she just immediately becomes totally focused on her computer, and like she's applying to med school, and the housekeeping just totally goes to crap. And she has a son, Brandon, who's, I don't know, about 10 maybe. And at the beginning, before the father has died, she's scolding him for not helping around the house. But then after her father dies, then, like, if not for him, they'd be in a total pigsty. He just kind of takes responsibility and starts picking up after his mom.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, with the mental health aspect, because it's so clear just how much the father's death, I don't want to say broke something, but there's this huge shift in her and who she is, and it's just, her personality completely changes. Because you see her in the beginning of the book, she has been the caregiver for her dad for 7 years. She's bathing him. She's clipping his toenails. And she's getting stepped on by her coworkers, and kind of is just, you don't really feel like she controls much of her life. And she seems to do lots of things for everyone else. Well, then when her father dies, it's like she becomes almost hyper focused on herself.
Okay, my life is not on hold anymore. I gotta do
Right.
my stuff now, and screw everything else.
And for me, it seemed like she kind of like was dissociating from what was going on. She wasn't even aware, because you see, is it that day? And she doesn't seem to be eating. She doesn't seem to be aware of anything that's going on around her.
Her son's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when the brother comes and he mentions the birthday, and she says, "Oh, is it whatever the date is, the 6th,
the 5th, yeah,
the 5th."
Yeah.
Yeah, and her brother is shocked that she hasn't even noticed that it was her son's birthday.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to me because it really seemed like, because you see tap, 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 tap.
On
over
the computer
and over again.
Keyboard.
The keyboard noises. And sometimes it's her only, it's not even her dialogue, but her, being, you just see her and you just see those words, tap, 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 tap. And there are some panels where those are the only words.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was really interesting just how beelined in she was on her computer, that she couldn't see anything. And it took this huge scary moment for her to kind of snap out of that at all. And because her reaction was just to focus in on med school and just that computer, whereas her son Brandon, that he got, once he got fed up about cleaning and actually cleaned stuff, that he focuses in on Batman, his cat.
Yeah.
Because Batman goes missing.
Yeah.
And that is, and I spent the majority of the book, I really did not know whether or not we were going to find Batman or not. So that was, that for me was part of the drive of, I want to know what happened to Batman. Do we find out what happens to Batman?
Yeah. Was there going to be another moment of grief of losing someone else besides besides his grandpa?
Right.
Yeah. But I felt like there's a lot in this book that I could say this about. I felt like it was symbolizing something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The fishing boat was kind of clear. It's kind of an elephant in the room that's reminding everybody of who is missing, who is gone forever.
Right.
But, yeah, the cat running away, I wasn't quite sure about that. And then there's one part where Brandon goes missing because he's out putting up posters for the lost cat. So, but then he himself becomes missing, and the brother's going out looking for him. And
she doesn't even notice that her son is gone. That was the thing for me, because he even calls her and it's like, hey, I'm gonna call you, and your son's been gone all day, and she doesn't notice. And it actually took me a reread to kind of realize how long it was. I had to look back and go, okay, was this really just one day? How long was this? And it really is, kind of morning to night that Brandon is gone. Putting up posters. For me, I need to stop saying that. I'm sorry. Brandon, with Batman, symbolized grief. Or not grief, guilt. Symbolized guilt. Okay. Because, again, either yourself, it's never stated in any way, and it does kind of make me wonder if the mom knew, Brandon's mom knew, but the fact that it is Brandon's fault that the father dies. Now, as a different character in the book said that he's been waiting for heaven for a long time, and that he'd clearly been ill for a very long time, but that ultimately the death was because of this quilt, which, as you mentioned, there's very little orange in the book, and the quilt is just straight up orange. And I thought that was an interesting coloration choice.
Right. So, yeah, Brandon is sitting in front of the TV wrapped up in that quilt at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
when his grandpa shuffles past him, can't get into the bathroom because he can't open the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so his mom yells at him to open it. He finally does. And then his grandpa doesn't go in. And then Brandon gives up and goes downstairs, leaves the quilt. Okay. Wow,
Leaves the quilt.
that's subtle.
Yes.
He leaves the
Yes.
quilt at the top of the stairs, and then
Yes.
later we hear that his grandpa tripped and fell down the stairs.
And then you see in one of the panels, there's a picture of the stairs, and that quilt is somewhat down the stairs now. It's no longer at the top of the stairs. It's now
the next
partway
page.
down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then later they're having a garage sale, I guess, and they're selling.
At the end,
stuff,
he sells it.
And it's like $2. It's like, no, that's worth a lot more. $2. I want this gone. I want this away from me.
Yeah, and his grandma made it, but he wanted to get rid of it. The other thing about that was that he has nightmares when he's sleeping in his bed with the quilt over him, and he goes and throws the quilt in the closet.
Yes. And that was because the nightmares were also they were about his grandfather, but they were also about Batman the cat.
Yeah.
And whether Batman, kind of imagining the worst for Batman.
Yeah, and the burning of sugarcane fields. Now, this was something I wasn't familiar with. And by the way, this book seems to have an environmental aspect to it that I wasn't sure how that fit into the grief story. But I guess in some places where sugarcane is grown, it's been a common practice to burn the field to make it easier to get at the part you want to harvest, and you burn off all the leaves and stuff. And it's really bad environmentally and not really necessary these days. There are better ways to get at it. It's an outdated, at best it's an outdated way of getting to the sugarcane. But the Sierra Club says it's outdated, toxic, and unnecessary. It happens in Florida, too, apparently, but then some other places that grow sugarcane, they don't do it at all. So, and you see one panel where there are people protesting against burning the sugarcane, and like one sign says asthma on it, and so forth. But, nobody ever talks about it. It's never, there are no lines referring to it, but...
Well, and there are several... Throughout the book, there are several instances of what I would say that what caused Maui grief, pollution. So you've got the sugarcane, but then you also have the tourists that are there, and then you have the person who is pretending to kind of, you gotta live, as a part of the Maui. I'm trying to what that was.
The bumper sticker?
Yes, the bumper sticker.
Live Aloha.
Live Aloha.
Yeah, and the brother,
right.
I forgot his name, Robbie. Yeah, Robbie hates that. He hates the attitude because he feels like people who say live Aloha are just saying it's my way or the highway.
Yes, and it's because it's not the original of what Aloha should be. That, it's supposed to be about living to the land. It's supposed to be about, not cutting people off in traffic.
Yeah.
and I think that was kind of something that stuck out to me was the authenticity that Robbie tries to get at. And gets so angry at that person for their bumper sticker and for kind of taking advantage of the situation. I mean, taking advantage of another culture and using that for however they want rather than how it's supposed to be used. Conversation is
right. Well, we don't even know what the race of that person is, I don't think, but
no.
Yeah.
No, but I think the assumption is, especially since it's bracketed with tourists that are right behind, that happens at the same time. So it really made me think that this person was supposed to be white. That it seemed to me kind of like that colonization.
Yeah, where the others in this book are Native Hawaiians, apparently.
Yes. Well, and that's because I know that's a big thing within Hawaii and within Hawaii's history, especially in Hawaii's history of becoming a state and all, about the Native Hawaiians and how they felt about it and how no one cared how they felt about it, essentially. And kind of the injustices there. And I think there was subtle hints to that. That's clearly not the big overall point, but like I said earlier, that it's kind of the grief of Maui, if you will.
Coming up, what does the title No One Else refer to? We hazard some guesses as we continue our review. But first, a reminder to join us for 20th Century TV trivia, reviews of The Amazing Spider-Man by Lee and Ditko, and more at patreon.com/deconcomics. If you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support.
You like cheap comic books, right? Well, I'm Professor Allen, and I talk about cheap comic books on the Quarterbin podcast. In every episode, I'll dissect a single comic from my collection, as long as I paid no more than 25 cents for the issue. Forget about $4 new comics that you can read in 4 minutes, or crossover events that can cost $100 to collect. Join me in the Quarterbin, where even bad comics are a bargain, and good ones are a steal. The Quarterbin podcast is part of the Relatively Geeky podcast network. Visit us at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search Relatively Geeky or Quarterbin Podcast in iTunes. I guarantee it'll be worth every penny.
Getting back to Charlene, I felt like her reaction was sort of a mixture of just grief and wanting to get her life off of hold. I mean, how typical is this of a way to deal with grief?
Well, so many people respond to grief in so many different ways, and how long it takes. And it's so clear to me from reading it just how angry she was at her brother, but also just about people in general, that no one helped her to take care of him. And it becomes pretty clear that he was not a nice guy. He was not the nicest father in the world.
Yeah, particularly to Robbie.
Right.
He complains about him. But yeah, we should say Robbie had at some point left home and went out, as a touring musician, and he's been to Australia and wherever, and he came back to Hawaii not even knowing that his dad had died. It's clear from the beginning, because Charlene hasn't notified anybody. She just sat down at the computer and started applying for grad school.
Yeah, she is just completely shut herself off to the world. Dissociation isn't uncommon with grief, where you don't really feel connected to the world around you, the people around you. It's a common response to trauma. And being there when your father dies could be pretty traumatic, I would think. So I don't think that dissociation is particularly uncommon, I would think. As a grief, the point of dissociation, like how far she goes, is that was a lot. But I think it's demonstrably that they're making this character do this to show what it can be like. And I thought that at 2 points, both Robbie and Charlene are at stoplights, the light turns green, and they don't go. And then people start honking at them to get them to go. And I thought that was symbolic. The first time that it happened, okay, we're just showing that the tourists want you to get a move on. But then when it happened again, I was like, And I know that with grief, one thing that's commonly said is that your life has completely changed, and you feel like this person's world ended, their life ended, so the world should come to a stop. But it doesn't. The world just keeps going. And that's something that's really hard for people that are grieving, because the world just kind of keeps on moving by as if nothing had happened. Because as far as the world's concerned, nothing did happen. They're not personally connected to that. And I thought that you have symbolically, especially with her, where her world does kind of stop. She becomes so fixated, ironically, on something to get her life moving again, but to the point where she's ignoring everything else. So the world kind of did stop for her, and the world's just moving on along without her, and to the detriment of the people around her.
But then if you extend that symbolism, while Charlene and Robbie are waiting at the traffic light, he remembers that their dad once ran that traffic light, like right out in front of a huge truck. So it's like, Dad didn't stop for anybody, apparently.
Right. Right. Well, and it was also because his eyesight was going.
Right.
Which kind of tells you how stubborn someone is, that they can't see anything and yet they're still insisting on driving. And then, and you have that. I loved too how the panels are blue and then it's orange to indicate that little flashback. Little flashbacks are in orange. But then the next flashback, it's like, oh yeah, and you remember when he rained down the same day that he rained down the tree? Yeah.
The same month,
so, clearly someone who did not want to give up their autonomy. And that can be even harder for someone who's caregiving, taking care of someone because it's always hard to take care of someone. It's even harder when that person is fighting you, that, no, I can do this myself. I can still drive, when they can't see the papaya tree or the huge truck.
So maybe we should talk about the last scene.
Yes.
So the quilt is now gone, sold, and Brandon is in bed, on his bed in a sleeping bag, and finds there's something wet inside, and
initially
Batman,
I thought it was sweat. I thought it was sweat initially.
But Batman has had kittens in the sleeping bag.
Yes, Batman is apparently Batwoman.
Yeah. And Brandon runs out of the room and pukes. Because the birth of the kittens is kind of gross.
Yes, well, it happens in his lap, I guess.
Yeah. But, at the same time, it's new life now. Someone has been lost, but now there's new life, but new life is kind of upsetting in some ways.
Yes. I thought it was pretty poetic that you start it with the loss of a life, and then you end with the addition of 3 little lives. So I thought that was I could just imagine, though, too, the surprise if you had no idea, and it kind of explains what Batman was up to while she was gone.
Yeah. But yeah, so much is kind of subtle here. Like some panels I just wasn't quite sure what the meaning was. Like after Brandon finds Batman, there's a panel of a jet plane flying. Symbolizing freedom or joy at finding the cat, or I don't know. What did you think of that?
I wasn't sure what that was. Other than this is right when Charlene has had her wake up call.
Mm-hmm.
So, because she's kind of shut things out, Robbie and her have just had an argument about, because Robbie's saying, hey, you're being selfish. And she's like, whoa, 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 I'm selfish? I'm being selfish. I took care of our father for 7 years and I'm being selfish. Which,
yeah.
Good
or
point.
Is it
but,
the grief flying away? Maybe.
Her, waking up to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's crying and is clearly super upset and says you could have been killed. But again, she didn't notice when her son went missing for a full day.
Yeah.
So like that, the abrupt change. But yeah, I'm not actually sure. I'd have to dig into that a little more to figure out what that in particular symbolized.
Yeah. Or the burning of the sugarcane. I mean, yeah, there's some environmental component, and of course it shows up in Brandon's dream, but is there another reason for it to be here? Not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It is, because, I mean, that's where there's this big shift. She's, up all night. She spends some time on the boat, clearly actually, working through a little bit of her grief. And that's when you have where they go through her father's belongings, and then that's when they have the garage sale and they sell the boat, as well as a bunch of fishing equipment, and as well as Robbie's album, which I thought was kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
$6. But, I mean, because that is a turning point in the book. But then again, if that's the turning point in the book, why didn't we have that beautiful fishing scene that we see on page, 60? Why isn't that there? Why is it the airplane? I do not have answers for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, after 3 readings, there's still things I need to try to figure out about this book. But, but I mean, that's always good if the book wants you to read it again. Like, I've read it once and I still don't get it. I need to read it again. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And it's not that long of a read either. I mean,
no.
I had sat down to eat a meal and I read 2 Marvel comics and then I read this, and and that was about right. It goes really fast. I mean, it has more pages but a lot less words. So
yeah, I mean, there are whole pages where, because there's absolutely no like narration. It's all either conversation or, onomatopoeia or nothing. Mm-hmm. There's so much of that. But what I would give this book credit for is that I felt like I had to read it more than once. But once I finished it, I wanted to read it again. I wanted to explore more about the book and go, okay, that page where there was absolutely no, like all 6 panels, there were no words, but what did it mean? So.
Right, yeah, there are a number of places like that with just like different kind of aspect to aspect thing. And yeah, what are we getting here? I mean, sometimes it's like flashbacks interspersed with the scenery that Robbie's seeing when he's looking for Brandon. But sometimes it's just simply aspects, and I wasn't quite sure. Still not completely sure.
I will say I felt sorry. Well, I felt sorry for Charlene's character, especially in the beginning, and then I kind of got, the fact that she started ignoring her son. But I did feel quite bad for Brandon as a kid in all this. To have the guilt of I mean, even if that's not exactly what happened, it's very clear that that's what he thinks happened. And carrying that guilt of his grandfather's death, and then the fear and being ignored by your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that Robbie, trying to make things better, is like, well, do you want to go play soccer? Let's go play soccer. And he's like, I don't like soccer. I don't want to play soccer. I don't like soccer. And then his birthday cake, which is at his grandfather's memorial.
Right, yeah.
Is a soccer birthday cake when he said, I don't like soccer. So I thought that was really, like, I don't know, a cat cake. Lion King was in the beginning. Maybe a Lion King cake. I mean, like, why soccer when it's pretty clear that he does not, like, or that he says, I do not like soccer. And he's never played soccer. You don't see him doing anything with soccer.
No.
So not only did his mother forget his birthday, his belated birthday party, which happens at his grandfather's memorial, is a soccer cake. Just felt bad for the kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't put that together about the soccer. I remember him saying, I don't like soccer. Yeah, okay. Well, anything else we need to say about this? Oh, what does the title mean? No one else. I'm still scratching my head on that one.
I'm scratching my head too. I'm scrolling back through, and I will say that I just noticed that at the beginning of the driving scene, which ends in Brandon jumping out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
When you see that, because what happened earlier, the side view mirror has been duct taped on, and that's what I focused on in that panel. But you also see that there's a direction of headed to the airport sign, which why would they put that sign in there? And then at the end, you've got the plane.
Uh-huh.
Were we dropping Robbie off at the airport? Why put that airport this way to the airport sign on page 84?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah, as far as the title, I don't know.
No one else.
One way to think of it is that Charlene probably felt like that in terms of taking care of her dad. No one else was helping her. She had to do it all.
No one else was helping Brandon finding Batman.
Yeah.
But I don't know how no one else would apply to Robbie. Yeah, that was something that I was not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are lots of things I think you can apply it to. Like, Charlene, after her dad dies, seems to care about no one else but herself.
Right.
And just, working on applying for, med school. Maybe Brandon feels like no one else is responsible for his grandpa's death except him for leaving the blanket there. Mm-hmm. Maybe Robbie could say no one else understands why he likes being a musician and doesn't want to do a different job.
Right.
Or no one at all understands except him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There are lots of things you could apply it to. I mean, maybe it was meant to have multiple meanings.
Yes, but I have not. I have not gleaned. I was trying to come up with a really good answer for you earlier today. I have it written down in my notes of so what does the title mean, and I still just have a question mark next to it. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, something to keep contemplating, I guess.
Yes.
For the listeners while they're all reading this book.
Yes. Yes. Let us know.
Yeah, tell us.
If you've got a great idea.
Yeah. Mail at deconstructingcomics.com. What do you think the title means?
Yes.
Or on our Facebook. That's always the good, too. No One Else by R. Kikuo Johnson is published by Fantagraphics. Find out more about Alice and graphic medicine at graphicmedicine.org. And you can hear more from Alice in the 9th episode of our Fullmetal Alchemist podcast, The Law of Equivalent Exchange. available wherever you found this show. You can help Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and all our podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. And go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and we'll critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Next week, we present another edition of Tim Catches Up with the MCU, in which Mulele and I discuss Avengers: Age of Ultron. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.